Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to another object-oriented programming tutorial. Last class we were talking about this customer.java class where we created a customer class and we were using this relational schema. So on this relational schema you can see you have customer class, you have hotel class and room class, which we were trying to do in the tutorial. So in this class we are going to continue to make the room and the hotel class. So the same project you can see here, you have theme park project where you have the customer class. So I'm going to add it to this one, new Java class. Always make sure to give uppercase letter to begin. Room. So we first with hotel, because if there is no hotel, there is no room. So let's make hotel. And basically hotel has hotel ID. As usual, you can see we have started to stick to the concept of ID being just ID. In the customer class also we have just ID, and this is because we wanted to use the auto increment fields on the databases. Now some of you who are coming from the database background may have misunderstood this, because we always have this primary key. The whole purpose of normalization in database systems is to create a primary key. But the reality is, although you have a primary key like hotel ID or room ID, they really don't exist in the real world. You are creating them because you have room numbers. For example, room 203, and that same room can appear in many hotels, you see. So you have to make up a room ID, and that room ID can be just auto increment field. But as for the customer can have an ID card number, and that ID card number is unique for all the customers. Now the problem is we can't make that as a field. The reason is it is a primary key, but what if there is someone else, like for example an expatriate worker or someone from not from Maldives, he has a different ID card structure. He doesn't even have an ID card, for instance. He will just have a passport number or work permit ID or something like that. So we use ID that is common for everyone. This is one reason why it is chosen to use auto increment field like this. On the other hand, many web frameworks also try to stick to this principle by default, where it will always have an ID field, and that ID field will be combined with a table name like hotel underscore ID when referring to the foreign key. Alright, so hotel has hotel ID, then it has hotel name, which is going to be a string hotel name, simple hotel name. And as usual, you have to make sure you have all these other things, which is insert, code for the constructor, generate. Okay, this is default constructor. So ID is 0 and hotel name is. This is because we want to create an object at the same time give it some default values. The other one is overloaded constructor. You can either write them or generate them, doesn't really matter, but in the exam you have to write them anyways. So remember, the structure is it has the same name as the class name. If it is overloaded, it means it has all variables, the private variables, and they can be the same or they can be different. If they are the same, you have to put this operator in front to make sure you identify the ID from this ID. Okay, it's a common practice to have the same name and use this operator here. You insert the other things like getters and setters. So we make getters and setters, and as I told you, these are private objects. So not private objects, private variables. So private makes them variables as encapsulated data, and then you have these variables these methods that can help achieve those publicity by giving the other classes to access through these methods. Okay, so you would have seen this in the other programming languages like PHP also. Anyway, this is how we create a hotel class. Now let's create a room class. To the same project, we add a new Java class and we call it room, capital R. Okay, so remember, this is just one room, one hotel, one customer. So you can't give customers, rooms, give singular names in the models. Now in database, it's the opposite. You make it rooms table, hotels table, customers table, because it's going to contain many customers, right? Okay, what is in the room? You have room number first of all. Again, we will use ID as a integer field, auto increment field as a primary key. Then we have the room number. So private integer room number, and room number sometimes is given as 203-104, like the numbers. I have not seen other room numbers in any hotels where they gave it S or A in front. Not sure if that is it. If that's the case, you have to change it to string. If the room numbers contains values other than numbers, like for example, if it is let's say a junior suite or a deluxe room, then it has at the end some D. I don't know. It doesn't really have in real world, right? Okay. We have room price. So private double. How much is this room? So just price. In fact, room number is okay. Room price, room number. It's better to have identifiers. Sorry. Identifiers that can identify the room price or hotel price like that. But because this is inside the room, you can identify it. You don't have to give room in front of it. Although if there is a good programming practice to give room price, room ID, that kind of wording. Then the last one is hotel ID. So where does this room come from? And that is where we said we have integer hotel underscore ID. Okay, I will make it this way. Hotel underscore ID is what the database terminology uses, but on programming we use camel casing, where you have hotel ID, a capital. So that is the room. Do we have anything? Status. There is another item called private string status. This means that it's booked or is free. Now you may actually disagree with this field because you can actually calculate and find whether the room is free anyway. But this is just an additional item I have added because status field can be used to identify whether the room is booked or not booked by using a single query. So when we are booking the room, we will update this status. That is an easier way. Okay, there it is. There's our room. Now let's try to run these generators for generating default constructor, and default constructor we have to initialize these variables to default. ID equal to 0, then we have the room number which is 0, we have price which is also going to be equal to 0.0. Can put all of them in one line. Hotel ID is also equal to 0. You can actually put it here if you like. All of these are going to be 1. Hotel ID is equal to room ID, which is also equal to room number, which is 0 in one line. As this is string, so separately you have to say status. Initially status will be free. This is not booked, so available we can say. You see, available is the default. Well, anyway, there is nothing, right? If there is no room number, there is no status as well. Okay, generators. So let's generate the overloaded constructor. So overloaded constructor has all these fields. You can see here you can create a room by using all these variables. If you already know them, or if the values are coming from a graphical interface, you can just send them directly to the constructor. Overloaded constructor, I mean. Okay, one is the rest is insert code for the getters and setters. So these are the getters and setters, and you have to generate them as usual. And I'm sure you have tried this earlier, but remember the room number is integer, that's why it's returning integer. The price is double variable, that's why it's double returning double. These things you must be absolutely familiar by now. And when students come to Java 2 and they don't know these things, it's really disturbing, because it means your teacher in Java 1 did not teach you well, or you didn't study well. Either way, I don't. If you don't know this much, that means there is also neglect on the lecturer side. But either way, I don't blame the lecturer. Students have to take the blame because it's their private learning time where they have to learn more, not in the classroom, right? So this is what we have as for the room details. So we have a room and we have a hotel and we have a customer. So for now, what is needed for booking we just don't have the booking records, which we will do later. For now, let's create a hotel. So in this case, we have a customer, we have created a customer. This was what we have done earlier. So I'm going to remove this one and just start with room or hotel first. So hotel, let's say I'll call this as Paris Hotel. So Paris Hotel equal to new hotel. Now if you give like this, when you don't know the details, then the customer can insert hotel name, hotel details, all these things, but usually they come from a graphical interface, not by command prompt, right? That's not ideal. But we will, for now, we are going to use Euler constructor to create them. So what is the Euler constructor? Oh, sorry. You have here hotel table. You see, hotel ID and hotel name. So we have to give some ID. Of course, in the database, we don't have to. It will automatically pick them up, but we give something. For initially, hotel ID automatically incrementing if it is in the database. Otherwise, you have to give something. So this is 1, and hotel name Paris Hotel, for example. Okay, so some Paris Hotel. Paris Hotel. You have space if you want, right? Because it's a string. So this is what. Now you can easily print the details and see whether it works. Let's say Paris Hotel dot get hotel name. See if it works. See? There is Paris Hotel. Okay, let's create a room that belongs to Paris Hotel. So room, let's say room 203. It's just a room with the number can change. Sometimes you want to use the object and change the number if there's a loop. Anyway, new room, same thing. So if you know the details, you can directly give the details. Let's say, for example, in the room, the Euler constructor says you have to give these details. So let's say you create a room and you are giving these details. So you say ID, this is the first room. So ID, first room, room number, as I say 105, for example, meaning on the first floor, fifth room. Some people might say G05, I'm not sure. If that's the case, you have to give a string to the room ID. But let's assume it starts with 005, which is ground floor, 105, first floor, I don't know. We will just stick to this first. Price, this is a, it doesn't say room type. There should be a room type, because rooms have room types. This doesn't have it. Oh, it's there, I just missed it. Room type, because you need it, you know. Price, before price, in fact, what kind of room is that? It decides the price. Private string room type, and when we say room types, we mean deluxe rooms, or junior suite, or penthouse. You know, there are different types of apartments. Even as rooms, you can have a whole suite for yourself. So room type, you have to click this one, and you have to insert the code for the getters and setter for this. Others we have. Okay, it will actually insert where you clicked, so you have to make sure you clean up and paste it where it belongs. So at the end, or in fact after the room number, it doesn't matter where this is pasted. So where it is pasted, what is important is that it exists right in the class. Now it doesn't exist in the here. This is a string, so this also is going to be empty. We have to add this into the string field here, because room type, just like this one, this dot room type is equal to room type. Finish it up. You can regenerate if you want by deleting the constructor, but saves time. So that is room number, and then room price. Before room price is the type. So this is a deluxe room. You know, there are different types of rooms. So this is a deluxe room, and you have to pay 900. Let's make it 1200 per day, per night actually. So this is how much the room cost, and the hotel ID is in the graphical interface. You will prompt the customer to choose, but for now we give one, because we only have one hotel. You can't give a room that doesn't exist, a hotel that doesn't exist. So if you are familiar with databases, there is a terminology called referential integrity. Referential integrity means the foreign key must exist, the hotel must exist. So, you know, that kind of policy. So if it is a primary key, and if this room ID refers to a hotel ID that doesn't exist, it shouldn't work available, because no one has booked it yet. So that is the room. Now we can actually try to check the details. Now some of you may have seen the toString method in other programs, where you have at the end here you have toString method that we'll do later. The toString method is just a string representation of the class. So that will give everything about the room in one line or many lines. It's just an output. For now we are not going to use it, because our primary user interface will be a graphical one. Room equal to new room available. So you have here testing. We will say room price, room is plus room dot get room type, and plus comma price price is just these two details, room dot get price. Do we have price? Yeah. You see, so this is creation. Room is deluxe, price is 1200. So something like this. So basically, of course, we are not going to main class. We are not going to use main class for the view. As I told you in the last class, when we have something like this customer, hotel, and room, we need to create the corresponding interface. And that is when you have a model which is customer class or room class or hotel class, you are also going to have a view. And that view is where you're going to insert the customer data like add, edit, delete these things. Now, add, read, update, delete the CRUD. This is called create, not add. I mean, if you really follow the CRUD, this abbreviation is CRUD, so it stands for update, create, read, update, and delete. This is what CRUD means. So the controller will have those functions when you click those buttons to add, edit, delete. It's actually triggering these functions in the controller. We will come to there. For now, these are the classes we have created, and let's look at this concept where we have this composite key. Now, if you come from a database background, you would realize this. Otherwise, if you come from purely programming background and don't have much on why we have this booking records here, why we can't connect customer directly to the room, you will have a little bit of difficulty in understanding. So what happens is, you see, I as a customer can book a room, and that room has an ID here. At a given point of time, of course, I can't, no one else can book that room ID. But that room ID can be booked by another customer. And there will be some rooms where no one has booked. So where are you going to put customer ID? And just because there's a customer doesn't mean there is a room for him. You know, he may not book any room. So customer table should exist separate, room table should exist separate. There cannot be a foreign key here for customer. There cannot be a foreign key here for room, because customers are just customers who may or may not book a room. And just because there's a room doesn't mean it is booked. You see? So in order to have such kind of association, this is called many-to-many relationship between customer and room. We break them and we come up with this composite entity. And this entity creates its own primary key field, and it's called the booking reference or booking ID or ID simply. So this is the booking records, meaning which customer booked which room for which date. So they have to identify the date that they booked the room for, and then only they will be able to register the room. So let's create this one booking records as well, so that we can actually go for a real interface where we can create the booking. So adding one more class into the item here. You know what, actually I'm going to change my mind, because this is going to be your assignment, right, anyways. So I don't want to create all these classes for you. Your assignment requires you to complete this thing, and the whole thing, not just classes, you have to make sure you create that interface that I have shown you earlier a little bit, where you can see a customer has booked a room, and then he's also booking activity. So I'm going to discuss these details with you as a separate video, where I'm going to explain the diagram, this relational schema with the activity details and room details, booking details as an assignment, how you have to do and why I expect what I expect from you. Okay, so for now, you know, you have these three classes, and these classes are actually called models from a programming perspective, and they will represent some kind of a database table usually. And once you have the model, what you need now is a controller that can control it, that can refer to showing the data about customers. So first thing that will come to your mind is, where is the customer data? Where should I enter the customer data? So that is where the graphical user interface concept will come up, and it is very important that that we understand that the segregation between the controller and the view. The view is what displays information to the customer, and for the customer perspective, he is not going to understand what's happening here in the background. But as a programmer, you should know the controller is where the data is, logic is controlled, but still customer data will be inserted on an interface. So that interface will have all the details of the customer. It should share and enter the ID card number, name, phone number. Once you enter these details, then the customer information will be saved. Like the example I was showing you earlier. Let me see if that project still exists. And we will also do the database part soon enough, but for now you have to remember there is some example, but of course this is not exactly the same. You have more fields there. You have customer name. Yeah, I'm going to run this project to show you again what I was talking about. See here, run this. Yeah, so it's just some kind of a screen. You don't have to do exactly like this, and in fact the assignment is going to be a little bit different from this one. ID card number. So ID card number and contact number is what you're using for register. Let's try to say I have an ID card number of A0. In this case, okay, you are using ID card number, and we will generate a customer ID. You can see here in the customer, you have ID card number, name, phone. This ID is auto incremented by the database. You only enter these details. So A099647, for example. And phone number, you can enter any phone number you like, because that is what the customer gives. I won't use this phone number to contact me. It may be his number, it may be his wife's number, his son number, his dad's number, I don't know, doesn't matter. So this account doesn't exist, of course, because if you try to log it, it will say customer not found, or this customer doesn't exist. Or it goes in, or this customer actually exists. Yeah, let me go back. I want to do a new customer. So this customer has been registered actually. I can't close this window. Okay, so I have to do a booking. So it actually forces the customer to do a booking. If you're logged in, you can prevent that kind of behaviors. For example, here there's a problem because something is missing. So I have to stop this problem. Again, that program is not 100% complete. I just want to show you the register interface. So there is kind of a view, where the customer is trying to log in or register. So where is the project? Let's run it again. Run. There is the interface, and A099664, not 64, let's say 639. And the phone number can be the same actually, doesn't matter. Register. See here, it goes for your name. Same details, right? Same details. You are asking the name. So you ask us, just tell us a few more details. What's your name? And then Ibrahim Sulaiman, for example. Confirm. So you have registered, and then it brings you into this other window. It should bring you into that other window. Where is it? Yeah. Okay, the database is not up. Sorry about that. So there was a database problem, and the database, of course, error was not shown. So the reason is in the error is shown separately, as a system.out.println. That's why the error is not appearing there. If you look at the output for the program. Okay, let's register again. A099639799239. Register. It takes you to this window. Ibrahim Sulaiman, and then confirm. It should register and take you back into another window. I'm not sure what's happening right now. Oh, it's a loop. It's wrong. Okay, so I ran into a fault in the first case. Okay, anyway, here you registered 639, and then phone number. If these details are correct, it will allow him to log in, and then once he log in, it will take you to this window where he can book. So that is the details. So customer, you can't actually change the customer data here initially, okay? I mean, because customer has already registered. Now if you want to delete and edit his details, or customer himself wants to change his phone number, that will be edit window. We haven't done that. So this is kind of like how we are trying to show this whole assignment to you, and I'm going to show more details when I create the assignment for you. So as a first few classes, we are going to do this kind of practices. I will create some classes and play around. And for the immediate next class, what we will do is we will create an interface where we can enter the details of customer, what we call as the customer controller and customer view, and then we are going to connect it to the database. Then we will see if we can send the data from customer class to come from customer controller into the database where the data can be stored, and this relational schema need to be created, of course, in the database. So in case of Java programs that you are doing with the graphical interface, you need to install WAMP server. I will suggest you to install WAMP server. If you do, this is WAMP server 64-bit. So WAMP server, you install WAMP server, and on MySQL you create this. You can either use phpMyAdmin and sorry about that. phpMyAdmin, where is that? That is, or you can. This is creating problem because my Apache is not run well. Okay, so this is another tip for some of you. If your Apache doesn't work on Windows, it's very likely that there is a service called branch cache that's running. So stop the branch cache and then come back and rerun it, restart or refresh even. I think refresh also will do fine. Okay. Yeah, it should work. Okay. It will go green. Yes. So use phpMyAdmin. In my case, my password is root, username is root, password is also root. Don't leave password empty. So always use some password, at least root. Then from here you create a database, choose the database, and create the tables and structures by looking at this relational schema, and have sample data. And no need to have sample data, just have the structure ready so you can insert some data. In this case, let's see if we have this data. I think this is Silex Island. In fact, this is theme park. This is also the same actually. I gave this assignment as a database assignment to some students. So this is actually the level that you are seeing. Okay, this is better. So you have here the customer database, and the customer database you have customer table. You have here some details of the customer. So no need to have all the details, just structure is enough. So you go to the structure, you create the structure by going through all these things. And in this case, we are using customer ID as a voucher. I want you to use auto increment field for customer. Okay. So follow on the syntaxes here. Just replace the IDs, all these primary keys with ID, and foreign keys with hotel underscore ID, room underscore ID. You see here. This is okay. Don't use room number, use room ID. Customer ID. And here also, don't use customer ID, just use ID. On the foreign key, it will be customer ID. Stick to that. This is to teach you something here. Okay guys, that's it for this class, and next class we are going to come back and create a graphical interface where we can insert this customer's data into the database. So we are trying to rush a little bit to learn as much as we can, because I want to give you the assignment quickly so that you can start immediately working on it. At the same time, make you work on something useful rather than just doing random programming. Okay, thank you very much. See you next video.